This is your permanent microphone, is it?
Yes.
Okay, and that's fine. Do my makeup. Yes. Yes, I'm half British, half Australian, half Irish. She was a lovely lass, but I had to blow up her ass. Yes, that's one of the famous lines of Leprechaun in Vegas. So my British side is, of course, very British, you see, and that's why I was raised in England. Then I went to the land of my father and got into television when I was just turning 20. I became a news cutter, a news film cutter, and then I made promos for the station, and those promos came to the attention of another network who said, hey, come and make promos for us. So I did, and my promos helped them win the ratings against the other networks, and they were so grateful. When I said I have to visit my parents in England, they gave me a reel of my stuff. You know, they were made on videotape, but they transferred them to 16mm film and gave me a reel, and I took it to Japan, showed it to people in Japan in order to get myself education on color television, which Australia in 1970 was in black and white. So that led to making trailers for an American company in England, and I made 25 trailers, some for Hammer horrors like Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed. Good luck with that. Once Upon a Time in the West, Sergio Leone's classic Western, that trailer is on YouTube if you can find it, still a good trailer. So I made over 100 trailers in England, Australia, and America. I stopped making them, maybe 2 decades ago, but they were a useful sideline between my own films. I've always been influenced by trailers, and they fascinated me. In fact, when my parents would take me to the movies in England, go to a double bill, and there'd be a newsreel, a cartoon, a 1-hour supporting feature, and then the main film. But it was always preceded by the trailers. But in England, once you bought a ticket, you could stay the whole day. It wasn't just for the session. So I would always tell my parents, can I see the trailers again? Can we just wait till the next session starts? They occasionally indulged me on that. But I found them fascinating because I wondered why they chose those bits. And then I would see the film a week or so later, and I would bear in mind what I'd sold in the trailer. So it always interested me. So when I got into television and came to a station that needed to have promos made, I said, your promos are dull. I was all of 20 and thought I knew. Anyway, I said, your promos are dull, not enough sex and violence. And they said, all right, you have a go. So I did, and they worked. And so that's what got me to the other network. And as a result, an American company hired me to make trailers for them in England. And that's what I said. I made 25 there and another 75 going back to Australia and occasionally in America and Canada. But part of my deal with going back to Australia after that was, I'll make promos for you again, but you have to give me programs to make. So I started making, all sorts of, I did film clips for variety shows. I started to produce dramatized documentaries for them. Eventually I left the television, formed my own company, and made a 50-minute basically documentary, which would be a TV special called The Stuntmen, about how stuntmen do their stunts. And we created movie sequences like a war sequence, a western, a car chase, motorbike sequence, and then showed how all the stunts were done. It's not a fresh idea, and but it's been done many times since. But it won Best Documentary in the Sydney Film Festival in 1973, and that got me credibility. So I wrote, produced, and directed it, and so when I wrote The Man from Hong Kong, I had at least a proof of concept that I could direct. And luckily, The Man from Hong Kong worked out well, and I made 42 long-form films and 44 episodes of television. Yes, I wrote it initially as a 6-page treatment and was arranged to go to Hong Kong to make a documentary about Bruce Lee called The World of Kung Fu, which was just beginning to land in the West. Enter the Dragon had not come out yet. It had been shot. Sections of The Game of Death had been shot. They'd stopped to actually shoot Enter the Dragon, and now they were finishing it off. And Bruce was in Hong Kong, and I got the Australian distributor of all his Chinese movies that were waiting to be released. And they said, okay, we'll send you to Hong Kong, be there for a week, do this documentary. I had pre-sold it to an Australian television network. So I boarded the plane, and the idea was, once I'd done the interview with Bruce, was to say, here's this little story I've written, and this would be a great film for you. So as the plane stopped in Jakarta airport for refueling, I got out and saw a newspaper headline, Bruce Lee dies. Oh dear. And my cameraman was traveling the next day behind me, so I'd have a day to line things up, and he'd arrive and we'd start shooting. But so I had to think on my feet. We managed to get footage of the funeral, 20,000 people crammed into Kowloon. It was a city in a state of shock and national mourning. Enter the Dragon certainly did a great deal to promote Asian culture, but if he'd lived, what the other things he might have made with the success of his films, it would have influenced Western filmmaking even more than it has already. It took another 20 years really for Jackie Chan to make the same kind of impact. Bruce, I wish I could have met him, but I felt I know enough about him and his whole life through all the people he was associated with. So he's a hero of mine. I had a great collaboration with R. Lee Ermey in The Siege of Firebase Gloria, which was shown yesterday. Did you see it?
Yes.
Oh, good. I had a great collaboration with R. Lee Ermey, America's most famous Marine. He was just a great guy, and I cast him again in Omega Code 2, Megiddo, as the President of the United States. And I think R. Lee Ermey would have made a much better President of the United States than the one we have at the moment. In Australia, I was perhaps a medium-sized fish in a small pond in the Australian film industry, and I got on a plane to Los Angeles to find my level in Hollywood. I landed in and immediately became plankton in the vast food chain of Hollywood, and I aspired to become at least a dolphin, swimming playfully through a wide variety of genres. But it seemed, maybe I just, was a sort of quite happy trout, who knows. The main thing is to keep working. Work breeds work, and occasionally someone spots you and says, okay, I'm going to give you a shot here. The head of programming of Showtime in the US, he had seen Firebase, so he gave me Sahara to make in 1995 with Jim Belushi, doing the Humphrey Bogart role in the 1943 Sahara, and we remade it in some sandhills on the Australian coast that looks remarkably like Libya. Actually, I had 2 years in Libya as a child in that very similar place. So that led to 4 films for Showtime, which were nicely budgeted television films. The main thing is to be practicing your craft with telling a story with a camera, with actors. I don't care if it's for television or if it's going to be theatrically released. The main thing is it will reach an audience, and you use the very same disciplines to make television as you would to make a feature film. It's you aim for the best quality you can get. I also, of course, have done some horror movies, and because I like those. So my early films in Hollywood were Night of the Demons 2, Leprechaun in Vegas, and Leprechaun in Space, all of which were considered to be B-movie trash, yet, funnily enough, they've become cult movies since, so I must have done something right, because I have a feeling I was possibly, in my early years, maybe a little bit ahead of my audience in terms of, in meta terms. I hate that word now that Facebook has co-opted it, but there are all sorts of genre satirical references throughout my work, or little social comments, and they're sort of layered into the fun and action and laughs and gasps to sugar the pill for any political message I might be having. Turkey Shoot was made at the beginning of the Ronald Reagan presidency, where I thought, well, what if Soviet-style authoritarianism took root in a capitalist country and just applied those strictures to making sure that the population obeyed, and they set up re-education and behavior modification camps for dissidents, for people who complain about the way the government is doing things. And you guess you might contrast that today with alligator Alcatraz in swampy Everglades, alligator infested, where people are being deportees are being put in tents without air conditioning and shipped out on the nearest plane at the airfield. I didn't think we would come to that, but it seems we have. So that was the message of Turkey Shoot, and it did not go down well initially. It went down very well in drive-in theaters. It went down very well where they just looked at the violence. But now I think people have come to look at it as much more of a political message as well, but where I've used exploitation material to couch in my subtle way. Initially, I think my early films were written off as, B-movies, slightly trashy, exploitation. The Australian censor made Man from Hong Kong unavailable to the under-18s because it was excessively, gratuitous violence. And they had a bit of trouble with the interracial sex as well. It took probably about $200,000 off the Australian box office, not allowing the teenagers who wanted to see it. It was cut in New Zealand to get to a sort of an M rating so that anyone could see it, and did much better in New Zealand, a somewhat smaller population base though. And it landed in the United States 6 months after the peak of the Kung Fu boom, so it didn't become a hit there. But it has become recognized since and has become a cult hit. But it was not appreciated at the time. Other Australian filmmakers felt that government money, quarter of the budget was government money, should be put into culturally uplifting films, not this kung fu shit, But hey, purpose of The Man from Hong Kong was to show, was to reverse, the racism of typical films in which the Western hero goes to Asia, beats up a lot of much fitter Asian guys than himself, and seduces a bunch of Asian ladies. Well, what if we have a Chinese Dirty Harry coming to Australia and doing the same? And being smarter than the racist cops that he is assigned to. I could get the social criticism in the racism that is implied by the cops past the Australian audience by having so much action and violence and humor. There's obvious humor in the film, and so that helps. An even better example really is Dead End Drive-In, and that was hated by its distributor, who was obliged to put it on. They tested it in front of people who were much older than the film was aimed at, and they hated it. The Australian censor initially wanted to give it an R rating, over 18s only, because they considered it to be socially subversive. The idea of, the government could set up benevolent youth concentration camps for the unemployed, where the police would supply drink and drugs to the inmates and they'd just eat junk food and watch junk movies. What more do young people want? That was an unpalatable message, even though our hero rejects all those values and is basically a decent, hard-working guy who just wants to find happiness in the world, admittedly in the midst of a junk culture. The distributor opened it in a cinema that was still under construction. That didn't help. Critics didn't like it, but they damned it with faint praise or outright scorn. Mad Max Light, So what do you do? However, it disappeared from the box office very quickly and went out on VHS. We'd sold it quite well to New World Pictures in America. They nonetheless cut 6 minutes out of it to make it less Australian. They wanted to dub it into American. We wouldn't let them. So they cut, instead of an 800 print release, we got a 400 print release for 2 weeks and straight to VHS, where they got their money back on VHS. And then the short version is the only version that got seen until now. The Blu-ray has the 6 minutes of not necessarily controversial material, but if you look at the extras, look at my commentary on the scenes that are missing, that are from that are included on the Blu-ray, you'll see why they cut it. They didn't like the racism criticism in Dead End Drive-In. They cut one of the big racist speeches because they thought it was too extreme. And they didn't like the fact that the hero liked Chinatown in the drive-in. And this whole idea of he'd round up the immigrants and put them in the camp. Oh, shocking. No one would do that. It languished. But then it got discovered by Michael Wilmington of the LA Times. Quentin Tarantino discovered it, talked about it in the film Not Quite Hollywood, and suddenly it was discovered again. And now the full version is out on Blu-ray, and it seems to be as socially relevant today as it was, though unnoticed, when it was released in 1986.
I even have it in my bag.
You have the Blu-ray?
Yes, correct. This is
oh no, this is this. Oh, maybe it is. So it has The Stuntmen, my very first independent film. It has Hospitals Don't Burn Down, my 24-minute fire safety film, which I made as a horror movie. Well, presumably it has my commentary on it. It certainly has the film.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Obviously, I've always been drawn to action because action is the universal currency of the movie market. A good punch-up plays well in America, Britain, South Africa, China, particularly China, though they do it better than we do. I mean, I'm seeing some pretty good fights in Ballerina. They're always trying to build state-of-the-art martial arts, and I've made 3 martial arts movies, Day of the Panther and Strike of the Panther, which are really dumb movies that I took over after they fired the director 4 days in, and I rewrote, recast, rechose locations on a nightly basis, and shot both movies with interwoven schedules back to back. And we only had 4 stuntmen, so we had to have them first with beards, then with hockey masks, then without beards, then with Halloween masks, Anyway, all sorts of tricks and at the trade to disguise the fact that you're working on a minuscule budget. Two movies made for $600,000 each. Screening them both is too much, but if you screen the second one, Strike of the Panther, you get a 7-minute recap of the first one because we were really short. You know, it was such a crazy schedule that at the end of the day, okay, well we can keep this tight or we could stretch it. No, let's keep it tight and let's add 7 minutes of a recap. Yeah, people often ask me, what is your favorite film of yours? And I say, well, in what genre? Because I am multi-generic. I love all genres of cinema. I love Bergman. I love Kurosawa. I love the Polish director, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it, Kieślowski. Because when to go sibilant and when not to go sibilant is a constant challenge for me in Europe. And look, I've seen I think the first Polish movie I saw was Knights of the Teutonic Order, Alexander Ford's, and I saw Andrzej Wajda's Ashes and Diamonds and Canal when I was a teenager. I had good film education at school in England. Sure, I love a good World War II movie if it has some depth and some insight. War is a subject that interests me because why do we keep doing it? Yeah. So I like horror and I like thrillers. I've even made a tearjerker. It's very hard to find. Jenny Kissed Me, a kind of a father's rights film. But that's probably you could say it's my least exploitation film, but we do have a sex scene. Give them a juicy sex scene early. You have their attention. When I was at school I was at a boarding school for 10 years, you were not allowed to go to halls of public entertainment. I would go in the school holidays, but during the school, no. But I would illegally borrow bicycles from the rack on an afternoon when I could skip sports or something, cycle 4 miles to a movie house, and one day I saw a double bill of The House on Haunted Hill and House of Wax. And there were moments in that quite laughable William Castle film that made me feel uneasy. And similarly in House of Wax. But I've never been scared. I never hid my head. As you get to see more grisly things, it made me want to see, I would like to do that stuff. I would like to put that on the screen. I'd like to push the envelope a bit. When they blew somebody's head off in Scanners, I thought, aha, well, why don't I do that in Turkey Shoot? Pretty much from now on, there aren't going to be the kind of stunts done physically by men and women. The stuntman who did a 200-foot fall, they won't be doing those anymore, and he survived a couple of those. He knew exactly how to do it. Some of these things are a little dangerous, and now you can replicate any stunt digitally. You can screen capture somebody's face. You can put it onto an avatar and make that body do just about anything. Stuntmen are going to become obsolete. They'll be needed for martial arts sequences. They'll be needed. Certainly, you can throw people into walls and onto nasty objects because you can replace the cushioned shapes that have been created for that purpose, that people get thrown into, and then that can be digitally turned into a wall or a row of spikes or whatever. I'm all for nobody getting hurt. Luckily nobody got seriously injured on any film of mine. The most serious accident was a stuntman who was deaf, and I did not know he was deaf, and he was not wearing his hearing aids, and he did not hear the motorbike approaching, and the motorbike had, lost power. So he turned too late and he got pinned against a car, broke both ankles. That's the worst thing that's ever happened on one of my movies. And I won't say I'm ashamed of that, because it was one of those combinations of circumstances over which I had no control, other than to say I wanted the bike to crash. But he was compensated and he went on to continue working. He was an older stuntman. But Grant Page's work was exemplary, and no one got hurt on anything that he coordinated in the films that I got him jobs on in the 5 years where I was his manager. As you know, I've done a few stunts myself, primarily, maybe a test of my own courage, which is completely the wrong reason to do them. But I had very good people looking after me. I've been set on fire 5 times for publicity stunts as the hottest director in town. That was for The Man from Hong Kong. I did those in New Zealand, Australia, and America. Even got I was hit by a car deliberately in Soho Square for a newspaper photograph. During the UK release of Man from Hong Kong. So I did these things not just for publicity and for vanity, but also it taught me a lot about how to shoot them. So if I wanted to shoot someone to be hit by a car, well, you can see how it looks pretty good in Death Cheaters. Grant did, hit him at about 30 kilometers an hour, 30 to 35. It was good, but he was well padded. The nose dropped just at the right time. He rolled onto the bonnet and a synchronized movement went right over the top. When I did it in Soho Square, I smashed the windscreen, but I didn't get hurt. I got a tiny piece of glass that flew down and just nicked me on the side of the nose. Hardly bled. Anyway, I've had a practical experience with it. I would never do it anymore. And now, largely, those kind of risks are irrelevant and unnecessary. Yeah, I think everything that Grant Page could do, Tom Cruise definitely can do. His latest work, the fight on the biplane, oh my God. I see how they did every shot, and how they must have cabled him and disguised the cables so that there was no way he was going to come off that plane. However, that whole sequence must have been, let's say, a sphincter tightening experience. Not one I would have liked to have endured, though given the monetary reward, maybe. Anyway, I hope he continues to get ever richer, because he's a genius. Tom Cruise is a genius. He knows exactly what his market is. He knows exactly how to achieve it and put the right people around him. So, and I've been lucky. I had a lot of the right people around me. So that's what a filmmaker needs. Great film that I've seen recently, I would say Eddington was the last great film that I saw recently, and very recently. Joaquin Phoenix and Pedro Pascal, great actors, and a great director, Ari Aster, who was, he does a slow burn build of this troubled town in the middle of the COVID nightmare that America went through, and all the social divisions that occurred, and how these can drive people crazy. And it's a kind of a cautionary tale for a bit of social criticism, a warning of how things can get out of control. I considered that was a great film. The last particularly great film that I saw was Civil War, a frightening portrait of what could very easily happen if authoritarianism refuses to relinquish its grip.